Detroit Pistons are one of the most frustrating phases you can be in, whether you're a fan, whether you're a coach, a player, someone that works for the organization. If you're a janitor for the Detroit Pistons, the stage that we're in right now is very, very frustrating, and that's the rebuilding phase, and especially when the rebuilding phase is going on for an extended period of time. And as a Detroit Piston fan, watching how the league is moving right now, it definitely feels like the Detroit Pistons are getting overlapped with the rebuilding phases. When we look at teams like the Houston Rockets and we look at teams like the Orlando Magic, these are teams that were on the same timeline as us when it comes to their last few draft picks, and we've seen them take huge steps in the rebuilding phase. So it's pretty frustrating right now, and one thing that really helps when you're rebuilding is selecting the right talent, and I feel like the Detroit Pistons have been doing that. I love the young pieces that they have on this team. I love Cade Cunningham. I love Jaden Ivey. I love Jalen Duren. I love Ron Holland. I love all of these guys, and it seems like with the Detroit Pistons, they just had terrible luck. Terrible luck when it comes to pitting the right players around these guys. Terrible luck when it comes to these guys being healthy at the same time or being healthy consistently. This has been a bunch of bad luck for the Detroit Pistons, and something that can help turn that around is finding a steal in the NBA draft, and I think the Detroit Pistons may have done that in this year's NBA draft. And I'm not talking about the 5th pick, Ron Holland, who I think is a spectacular player, but the Detroit Pistons also had the 34th overall pick in this year's draft, and that guy is Bobby Klintman. And before we break down how great of a basketball prospect Bobby Klintman is, let's briefly talk about his route to the NBA. Now, from what I read, Bobby Klintman, he is from Sweden. His senior year in high school, he transferred to a school in the United States, a school called Sunrise Christian Academy in Bel Air, Kansas. During his senior year, he was able to become a 4-star recruit. He originally committed to the University of Maryland, decommitted to Maryland, and then committed to the University of Colorado, and then he decommitted from there and ultimately ended up going to Wake Forest. Now, he played 1 year at Wake Forest. It wasn't the best, and then he decided to turn pro. He went and played in the NBL in Australia, and that's just the National Basketball League in Australia, and it's a pretty small league, but it is talented, and it breeds NBA players sometimes, as we can see. Bobby Klintman, after not having the best year at the University of Wake Forest or at Wake Forest University, however it goes, he was able to take that pro route in the Australian NBL, which has 9 teams in Australia and 1 team in New Zealand. He was able to go there, have a productive enough season, get to the NBA Combine, put on the show at the Combine, and then the Pistons ended up drafting him. So that's how Bobby Klintman briefly became that's how he briefly got into the NBA and gotten this opportunity. And now we can look at him and break him down as a basketball prospect. Now, when I look at Bobby Klintman, and I didn't hear of him until he got drafted with the Detroit Pistons, and until I seen him play in the summer league. So I've been doing a lot of reading and watching a lot of his highlights. And the first thing that pops out about him to me is his size. I love his size. Looking him up, his stats read at 6'9". He's 6'9". 6'9" with no shoes. With shoes on, he's probably around 6'10". That's what he was at. Without shoes, he was measured 6'10" in the National Basketball League in Australia. NBA Draft Combine, they had him at 6'9" without shoes. So he's somewhere in that 6'9", 6'10" range, which is like crazy for the style that he plays. But he's pretty tall, and he has a really good wingspan. He has a 6'11" wingspan. So right off the bat, his size is jumping off at me. Mega pause on that. But right off the bat, his size is jumping out at me. And he also comes in at 212 pounds. So 6'9", 212 pounds with a 6'11" wingspan. That's tremendous size, and you can utilize him in so many different ways off his size alone. And then we get to his skill set. Starting on the offensive side of the ball, something that's really impressive that goes along with his size is his ability to stretch the floor and knock down that 3-point shot. He showcased this in New Zealand, just playing 20 not New Zealand, but playing in the Australia National Basketball League, playing 21 minutes per game, shooting around 4 threes per game. That's he was knocking down 36% of his 3-pointers. I can't remember the number when I was reading. He shoots a higher percentage on catch and shoot threes than his 3-pointers in general. So he can stretch the floor and he can knock down that 3-point shot, and that's going to be very critical at that next level. We also seen him knock down a 3-point shot in the summer league. In the summer league, he had a game with 3 3-pointers, and he also had a game with 4 3-pointers, and he shot 41% from the 3 in the summer league. So small sample sizes that we've seen so far, but it's all we can go off of right now. And if he's able to transition that to the NBA at the next level, I could definitely see him having a rotational spot with the Detroit Pistons, being that big and then being able to stretch the floor. And offensively, I do not want to undermine his game at all. I don't want to just call him a space creator. Watching him in the summer league and also watching him in the Australian league, I want to say he's an efficient scorer. Now, he's not the type of guy that's going to hit the ball on the floor and do a bunch of dribble moves and break guys down. But I would say, from what I saw, for a guy his size, his ability to put the ball on the floor, to attack closeouts, it is pretty good, and he was able to do it effectively in the Australian Basketball League and also in the Summer League. And it really looks like, because of his long legs, his long arms, he's able to just use 1 or 2 dribbles to get to wherever he's going on the court, and most time is going downhill because he's not super athletic. His vertical jump was just at 32 inches, so he's not super bouncy, but he has long arms and long legs. So what he lacks in burst, he makes up for it with taking those long strides to get to the rim. And all of his highlights, whenever he's attacking a closeout, is usually just 1 dribble move, 2 dribble moves, maybe sometimes 3, but never no more than 3 to get to wherever he's going. And I think that's going to be very important when you have guys like Cade Cunningham, who has the ball in their hands a bunch of the time. You need guys out there that can make quick, decisive moves with the basketball in their hands. And in this case, Bobby Klintman, he'll have the ability to hit a catch and shoot 3, or attack that closeout, take 1 dribble, get downhill, where from what I've seen, he's a really decent finisher around the rim. So so far we know he's a pretty solid catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Potentially could be a good 3-point shooter, and then also he can put the ball on the floor and make effective moves. Now, when I was watching his highlights, I didn't see too much of this in the Australian Basketball League, and maybe he didn't have the opportunity, but in the Summer League, he showcased some pretty terrific playmaking. And what was so impressive about these passes that Bobby Klintman made over the Summer League is passes that he was made, like the passes that he was making is like he kind of knew how the defense was going to react when he caught the ball. A lot of touch passes that were leading to easy shots or easy cuts around the rim. So just making passes like he's already 5 steps ahead of the defense. So I thought his vision and his court awareness and his court mapping is very impressive on the offensive side of the ball. So he could potentially be an underrated playmaker. Like I said, I saw some pretty good vision, making some pretty smart passes all over the court, on the perimeter, in the dunker spot, getting guys off the pump fake, just making a bunch of terrific passes in different situations. So I thought that was pretty cool to see a player his size, be able to read the floor and make those type of passes. So that's another thing we can keep an eye out for with Bobby Klintman. So that's what he is as an offensive player. He's not a volume scorer, but he's a efficient player, efficient with the basketball in his hands, makes quick decisions, whether it's passing, scoring, or putting the ball on the floor. The ball doesn't stick to him too much at all. And then defensively, from what I read in his draft profile and what I saw in the highlights, and when it comes to defense, you can never be too sure unless you're watching the whole game. Now, what I read about Bobby Klintman defensively, I read about this happened in the Summer League, and it also happened in the Australian National Basketball League. Is sometimes that he falls asleep on the defensive side of the ball, and he might lose sight of his cutter. And with some smaller guards, he might not be able to stay in front of him. Now, what I saw in the highlights, and I didn't have any really too many defensive highlights from the summer league, but there's a whole compilation of defense for him in the Australian Basketball League. Now, there is videos of him beating guys to the spot, sliding his feet, forcing turnovers by sliding his feet, and then also what he excelled at on the defensive side of the ball is blocking shots. He is a terrific shot blocker. His timing is impeccable, and a lot of his block shots were like chase down blocks are coming from weak side help. So he could be a guy that could be rotating down to help protect the rim. He is 6'9" with that 6'11" wingspan. Also seen him getting very active in those passing lanes in the Australian Basketball League. So it's pretty interesting to see that it's like a conundrum, a player with his skill set or with his vision and his court mapping to when he's on the offensive side of the ball, it seems like he knows where everybody is on the court, but defensively he gets a little lost sometimes. But I think that's something that you can change. That sounds like a mindset thing or maybe a coaching thing. So you get the right coach with him and get him to lock in on the defensive side of the ball. He could actually be a problem. Like we said, he's not supremely athletic, but he is mobile and he has long legs and long arms. Whatever he lacks in burst, he makes it up with his strides and his length. So the Detroit Pistons, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that Bobby Clement, I'm not saying he's about to become the next Nikola Jokic, but he does seem like he could be a really, really good glue player, a guy that does all of those little things. And then he has that size, his ability to pass the ball, and shoot the three-point shot. You can really utilize him in a bunch of different ways. And for a young team like the Detroit Pistons that's still rebuilding and probably still going to be experimenting things this season, I could definitely see Bobby Clement cracking his rotation, and he is going to have some competition because there's plenty of guys that plays the same position as him. Tobias Harris, Asor Thompson, Fontecchio. So he's going to have to come in and earn those minutes. And I don't know if we consider Isaiah Thomas to be a 4 or a 5, but if we consider him Beef Stew to play the 4 spot, he's a forward as well, so he's going to have his work cut out for him. But what I'm looking at, he definitely seems like a guy that could have been picked in the first round, and I see him being a really, really good glue guy if he continues to put in the work and go on this continue on this trajectory that we're seeing right now. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. Detroit Pistons, they finally seems like they finally got themselves a steal late in the draft, and with the state of the Detroit Pistons, I think they need it badly. But let me know what you guys think about Bobby Clement down in the comment section. And if you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree. I already said that, but then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.